During this video we shall be fitting the CPU, memory into the motherboard, then installing the motherboard onto the base plate. Here is the ZIF socket. Once again this should be suitable for the CPU that you are fitting. We saw earlier an arm at the side of the socket, and when we raised it the whole ZIF socket moved. While the arm is in the up position, the socket has been released ready for the CPU. Notice here a mark. We call this a legend. This indicates a polarity, and normally the device that we shall be fitting will also have one for alignment purposes. Here we can see that the underneath of the CPU another legend. You'll also find some missing pins from the CPU and missing holes from the ZIF socket. This makes it very difficult to insert the CPU in the wrong way, so if you're struggling to fit the CPU, check that the two legends are aligned and that the pins of the CPU are not bent. We can see how the CPU just drops into the socket without any effort. Next, pressure is put on top of the CPU and the arm lowered down. This will ensure that the ZIF socket has made good contact with the CPU. Now we need to apply some silicone grease. This can be found in small packs, or as in this example in a syringe. This increases the heat transfer from the CPU to the heatsink. Simply remove the cap and squeeze out a line about 1 inch long on the top of the CPU. Be careful not to put excessive amount on, as this can cause a spillage over the CPU when attaching the heatsink. Next, the heatsink needs to be hooked onto the retaining mechanism. This is a lug that one part of the heatsink clips onto. Then drop the heatsink onto the CPU. We can clearly see how the heatsink is hooked onto the retaining lug. The other end is also hooked over a lug, and the blue lever is turned in a clockwise manner, locking the heatsink and fan into position. Locate the power supply plug from the fan on the heatsink, then the connector on the motherboard, which is normally marked, or refer to the schematic diagram. Next is the memory. There are many different types, and we should be aware that all are not compatible with each other. Even when they look the same, they could have electrical differences. Here we are using DDR2 memory. Notice a key that is slightly off-center in the memory slots. This is for alignment purposes. Handle the memory at the edges, even when wearing an anti-static wrist strap. Pull back the retaining clips on the slot, then align the notch in the memory with the key in the slot. Apply even pressure to the ends, and as the memory is pushed into the slot, the retaining clips of the side of the slot will lock the memory into position. That's as far as we need to go right now with the motherboard. We will next attach it to the base plate in the case. As before, we shall remove the rear fixing screws and draw out the base plate. Before screwing in the motherboard backing plate will need to be installed. Here we can see how the holes in the plate align with the motherboard ports. This normally needs to be pushed in from the inside of the base plate and a little pressure to clip it into position. Now the motherboard can be screwed into the base plate. First align the rear of the motherboard with the backing plate. In most cases, when it is in position, you may find it click. Next, using the fine screws and a fibre washer, screw the motherboard to the base plate. The number of screws will depend upon the number of fixing holes. This has only been a quick look on how to install the motherboard, but if you found that you would like to know more, then you can always check out our website www.condoit.co.uk, where you can obtain a BTEC award in computer engineering. Next we shall screw in the motherboard into the case, attach the power connector and switch on.